Innovative content. Global audience.
From Akwukwu in Oshimili North local government area of Delta State, hails a man who was orphaned at the age of 6, but by dint of hard work has become an international figure following his uncommon expeditions. He is known to have undertaken 3 successful trips to the Sahara Desert and has over 100 awards to his credit, including that of Desert Conqueror by the British High Commission in Nigeria, though he prefers to be known as Desert Warrior. This renowned environmentalist, who was popular with his pet project, Fight Against Desert Encroachment, is the chairman, Mandela Gardens, a maker of a sort, located in the Delta State capital. Meet Chief Dr. Newton Chukwukadibia Jibunor, the Nna Obodo of Akwukwu.
My name is Newton Chukwukadibia Jibunor. I now reside here in Asaba after almost 50 years in Lagos, and retired to my farm and to my environmental activities. So, and I have been doing so in the last decade. Childhood was, thanks to the extended family culture that we have in Nigeria. I lost my both parents when I was 3, and I didn't get to know until I was 7. But because of the, like I mentioned, the culture of the people at that time, it wasn't that bad to navigate, to find my way navigating through difficult terrain, schools, colleges, university. But it was, every time I look back, it was always been a joy to go back and see how I was able to pull through without parents. Well, I think it's, when people ask me questions like that will make me tell stories about myself, I have difficulties with that because I don't want to sound patronizing. I would rather have people talk about me. I would rather have them talk about my writings, my expeditions. And it is true that I'm able to find out that person that is Newton Jibunor. Otherwise, I've always been, okay, people now tell me that I did a lot of activism. I didn't know when that was happening. People tell me now that I'm a nonconformist because of what they read in my articles, weekly articles that I write in the newspapers. So through that, I'm able to tell close to who that person is, who that Newton Jibunor is. Otherwise, if you ask me to tell my story, I will have difficulties doing so because it is out there. It is everywhere, and especially a life that started from age 7. I will give you a few instances where I farmed at age 7, 8, 9, 10, and I did some fishing in Anam, not too far away from here, about that age, and I taking my farm produce to the market. Then I found market women, saying things like, "Oh, that's that boy without parents," and they bought my produce at like a premium, something that would be like 5, 6 100 naira at that time. People were ready to pay over 1,000 for it. So even though I didn't have my parents to go to for the usual needs and requirements, but I was very rich. I had a lot of money. Even though my parents would come to me to borrow money. So anytime I reflect on all this, I think those are the things that made Newton Jibunor into who he is today. Because I started very early taking care of myself. I started very early re-engineering my resources. I started very early finding my own direction. But if you want me to go back that far, I would like to say that as a student in London, especially with my activism, with my taking part in protests and demonstrations, especially when Nelson Mandela was arrested and imprisoned for life. I did a lot of protests with people in London. That also opened up another chapter for me. Coupled with the fact that as a student in London, a science student, already getting involved with the environment, already getting involved with the arts, I felt like there was something more for me to do. And then I thought of becoming an astronaut. I applied. Also, I haven't been a science student. But unfortunately, the various calls I had in my science subject did not measure up to the standard that was required. And that pained me a lot. So something else now came to me. If I cannot go to the space as an astronaut and cannot possibly go to the moon, what else? Then the Sahara Desert was a very, I don't know if you will recall when Kwame Nkrumah in 1964 made a statement that the continent of Africa will remain in darkness until the Sahara Desert is tamed. I was still a very young man and a student when I heard such things. So I started asking questions. What is it about the Sahara? And the answers I got, frightening. It's a no-go area. People that have tried to cross the desert died or never been seen again. So I felt that that was going to provide me a wonderful opportunity to try out myself in trying out the impossible, especially since I couldn't go to the space. So I started to make arrangements with friends that later backed out of the arrangement because of the frightening information that we were getting at that time. So I chose to do it alone, even with my friends backing out. And that changed my life. That kind of, because the expedition driving from London alone across almost the whole of Europe, across the Mediterranean Sea, and across the North African countries like Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and then entering the Sahara, crossing it, arriving in Nigeria was a very landmark. That was what now changed my life into not only being convinced that I can now try the impossible, that I can also not only try the impossible, but succeeding in attaining a landmark event, because I think I must have been, if not one of the very few in the world, or maybe the first in the world, to try such a feat. That was a major, and of course, maybe as we go along, will get to tell you how I had to repeat such expeditions. Well, the whole idea started in 1965 because it takes like almost 6 months to make such an arrangement, to get the vehicles you needed, to get the vehicle in proper tune, to get the vehicle with all the international documentation, to get also my own documentation. I was to go to 13 countries. I needed to have visa for all those countries. And so it took 6 months to prepare. And then I recall the day I left London. It was on the 27th of December, 1966. And I recall some of my friends saying final goodbye to me. One of them wrote in a present he gave me that I opened whilst crossing the channel, and where he said something like, Newton, if you make it, I will have a hero as a friend. But if you die, I would have lost a very good friend. So mainly because a lot of my friends, a lot of those that I was involved with in London, in my activism, they tried to talk me out of it. But here we are. The journey lasted 2 months, from December 27 to February 19. I calculated all the risk. I mean, to a point where, even though people don't like me saying it, but it came out during one of my interviews with CNN, when I said that for you to be able to embark on an expedition like this, you have to be ready to die. Mainly because those that tried it before me, many of them did not come out alive. And I found that statement to be very useful. Because yes, all those things you talked about, I experienced them. Problem with the vehicle, problem with fuel, problem with the car, problem. Yeah, so I had all those problems came. But you see, when you are in an expedition like this, and you're ready to die, when you see death, and I did a number of times, it's a lot easier for you to handle, because you will now sit back and say to yourself, Newton, people warned you, people told you not to try it. And as such, you are able to handle that particular crisis. Because if you encounter such difficulties and you panic, you lose focus. And once you lose focus, and I'm sure that must have been what happened to quite a number of, especially journalists like yourself in the UK, because I read stories about those that tried, journalists that tried to cross the desert before I did. And once you panic, that's it. Whereas if you see death and you're ready to face death, you are better organized to handle that particular difficulties. And I think that must have helped a lot in being able to navigate my way. Bandits, robbers, kidnappers, all sorts of things happen. And then, like you said, difficulties with the vehicle occasionally. But because I was ready, that helped a great deal in surmounting those obstacles. I will take a quote from a statement I made in one of my writings, that there is a very thin line between sanity and insanity. Very thin line. Because I encountered a number of obstacles and problems in the desert whereby I found myself talking to my car. I found myself talking to my water. Water would change colors, and I would ask the water, why did you change colors? I found myself talking to my equipment, and to a point where I had to ask myself, my goodness, am I going mad? But then I got consolation from the fact I said to myself, okay, if I can ask myself that question, it means that I'm still okay. If not, why would I be behaving like a mad person in the middle of the desert, encountering difficulties with my car being bogged down in sand, with threats, by bandits, with all sorts of difficulties. But yeah, it's especially being alone. You hear sounds that don't exist. You see things that are not there. And like I said, it's only when you're ready for such a thing that you can take it on and find your way out. It's a very good question because, like I said at the beginning of this program, I hate talking about, not that I hate, I have difficulties talking about myself. I did ask myself, at the time I got to Lagos, after 2 months of expedition, I did ask myself, did I really do it? But fortunately, I had things that I had collected in the deserts. I had, going through 13 countries means I had 26 stamps from almost all the countries on my passport. In my passport. So I had a lot of showing when the time I entered the desert, the time I existed the desert, the time I went into all the other countries in Africa, trying to find my way, navigate my way. I had all those things with me. And of course, I was attacked by a desert bull at a stage in the desert. I killed a desert bull and cut off the head. I brought the head with me back to Nigeria.
Did you have a gun? Did you go with a gun?
No, I didn't go with a gun, but don't ask me anymore because I wouldn't want to. Saddled with not believing myself that, don't forget I was 28, 29 when this happened. Not believing myself, I was also able to reflect back to Kwame Nkrumah's statement in 1964 when he said that the continent of Africa will remain in darkness until the Sahara Desert is tamed. I saw it. I saw that it's the Sahara Desert that is stopping a lot of the African countries from developing. Do you know that the continent of Africa is the only continent in the world where you cannot go from west to east, north to south because of the Sahara? It's the only continent in the world where you don't have goods and services moving all over the continent. Why? It is because the Sahara, though the biggest in the world, but very active, expanding almost all direction of Africa. Then all the drought we have suffered, all the grazing fields that have disappeared, all the water bodies that have gone, even Lake Chad drying up, that's as a result of the Sahara. The Sahara has been moving. So I was then saddled with having been one of the first or the only person in the world to have experienced this and come out alive. What next? What then? What is the next thing to do? Am I going to start writing about it? Am I going to start appearing? Am I going to start campaigning? Am I going to start doing what? Sahara, 12,000 miles square. Over the years, it haunted me. It haunted me. What am I now going to allow this expedition to go for nothing? Am I going to just take the glory that people have started calling me all sorts of names about, All that led to my planning to go on a second expedition. This time, to drive from Nigeria back to London. Because I needed to, one, convince myself that I actually did it. Two, that I needed to do something going back to Kwame Nkrumah's statement. Because he said it. It touched me. I did it. What next? So, but this time around, I was not going to do it alone. Mainly because of the near insanity I found myself in the desert. I said, look, having somebody with me will go a long way towards helping that. I advertised. I went around everywhere looking for somebody to go with me. I didn't find. In fact, some people thought I was getting mad again. So I had to plan from here. Planning from Nigeria happens to be more difficult than planning from London. Because whilst in London it was quite easy to get documentation, international documentation that you need to support such an expedition. But doing it from Nigeria was very difficult. So you can imagine the obstacle, not finding anybody to go with me, and then planning the documentation for the car for myself from Nigeria. In most cases, I had to resort back to London. Anyway, I was ready to try the second expedition. And all the newspapers in the country, all the television stations, friends, it was all over the place. NTA offered to come with me up to the edge of the deserts. NTA also informed CNN in the event that they need to track me or track me dead in the desert, they will have the information. So NTA not only kept up with me from all the arrangements, my departure, my being flagged off in Lagos, being flagged off in Kano by the Emir of Kano, being flagged off in Abuja by the then Minister of Environment. It became like a national, even though people didn't stop talking, is he crazy? Why is he going to risk his life again? So I took off in February 2000 alone on the second expedition. And I've always maintained a wonderful relationship with the British Museum because of my activism in the art as well. And so they got to know. And you'll find it very funny because they now sent an invitation card to a lot of people in London, inviting them to the British Museum for a reception. and an award of a desert conqueror. But at the end of the invitation card, it's read, if he makes it. You can imagine that in London. And of course, because of the NTA's involvement, because of federal government involvement to some extent, I was received in London when I got there by Prince Ajibola, who was then our ambassador, high commissioner in London, and he organized the big. And some of them even went with me to the British Museum to receive the award of the Desert Conqueror. After receiving, you have to make a statement. I recall the statement I made that I'm not quite comfortable with Conqueror because what I saw in the deserts and what is happening in the deserts. I don't see how one person can conquer it. Not even one country alone can conquer it. Because as we speak right now, the desert is still causing havoc. Look at what is happening with the Heshman crisis and the Fulani nomadic people and the rest of it. Why are they leaving the north? It's because they don't have grazing fields anymore. The average nomadic Fulani family have a few thousand animal heads. They are not poor. But over the years, they cannot find the grazing fields. And all they do, they don't want to be urbanized. They cannot be urbanized. That's why we're having crisis. All they do, take their flocks in the morning to the fields, have them graze.
You can't find them in a particular place now.
And water bodies, they have all disappeared. So what do? Sit back and allow their thousands of animal heads to die. They sell off and take their animal heads and start looking for the next greenery where they can graze. And that's where we are having our crisis. That's where, because they stumbled into people's farm, and I've written about it a number of times. You can't come to a farmer is his own private business. Your animal husbandry is your own private business. Why would you then allow one to destroy the other one? But what do? People stop talking about the real thing. About the real thing, the fact that the desert is encroaching every day, it's taking lands, it's taking grazing fields, it's taking water bodies. And now we have millions of nomadic people coming into our cities, having clashes, some cases resulting in a war. And rather than talk about it, talk about our failures in building rehabilitation camps. And for what? Look, I have given a number of talks and writings about how best to handle this issue. I've been to so many COP meetings, Conference of Parties meetings all over the world. In fact, I think due to my activism, the issue of desertification is now become part, just the way the Amazon rainforest is being talked about. The Sahara Desert is also being talked about. Because it's destroying the whole ecosystem. That's a very... I've been asked this question so many times, and I can't quite remember giving the same answer anytime the question is repeated. I think it's the environment. I'm so close to nature. Here is, I call it a home with nature. Because that is what I do that other people don't do. I eat everything we all eat. But what I do for the environment, I think that is in turn taking care of me, taking care of my health, taking care of my whatever mental fitness that I have. I think is the nature, my relationship with nature. Not just talking about it, but practicing it. Everywhere I go, everywhere that I have lived. If you go to my village now, the whole place is littered with trees. My home is littered with trees. My home in Lagos is littered with trees. Here you can see what I have been able to do. I carry nature with me. And I know that not many people do it. Either because of the time it takes to plant, nurture, and the rest of it. But I go around the world, I go around the continent, I go around the country, I see my trees. In Kano, somebody was driving around the other day and he made a comment that Kano is now green. And the taxi driver said, it's Jibunor, that man from Delta. But it wasn't really me, but my campaign. You see, it's not just planting the trees, but stopping the trees that are planted from being cut down. So, and that has taken on quite a lot of, and that's what's given me so much joy, because I'm not known not only all over the country, but beyond, for campaigning for environmental sustainability.
What diets?
I eat, I'm a farmer. I grow some of the food I eat. I eat a lot of yam, a lot of pounded food, pounded yam. I eat a lot of plantain. I eat a lot of vegetables. I do you know what we call nsala? Like white soup. Nsala, my favorite. Yes, I love pounded yam with nsala. It's my favorite. Many. Let me start with being an activist and a student in London in the 60s. Martin Luther King was one of those that touched me with his statement that I want to be judged by character, but not the color of my skin. That touched me because at that time I was experiencing some racist abuse here and there. It was normal in the 60s. So I followed him, and he inspired me. The second person, the one I mentioned in this interview, Kwame Nkrumah, he was our voice in Africa. He was the one that was the loudest in terms of taking the whole continent with him, not just Ghana. If you recall, he also made a statement that the independence of Ghana is meaningless until the continent of Africa is free. And he also went on to say what I quoted earlier on, that the continent of Africa will remain in darkness until the Sahara. And then, of course, Nelson Mandela, who I followed his activities even before he was arrested. And I followed his arrests, followed his trial, and followed his imprisonment for life. And then he made that statement that the emancipation of his people is something he was ready to give his life for. Those 3, 4, then of course John F. Kennedy, also in the early 60s, when he was arguing with his Congress to approve his budget for going to the space and the moon. He made a statement that we're going to the space and the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. So those 4.
No Nigerian?
No, not yet. Maybe they will come, I don't know, before I quit this world. But I have not been able to. I have friends that have done wonderful things like Wole Soyinka with his writings He's been here a number of times and we do many things together. His writings are wonderful. He's a great literature guru. I read him a lot, and we became friends since the 60s. He probably would have come very close to becoming one of those I would like to. Not only that he went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize, but he is continuously writing. But Wole Soyinka, I was already a made man when I got to, but I'm talking of those that inspired me, those that shaped my life. And all those things happened in my 20s. By then, I didn't know much about Wole Soyinka. So, and shaping my life at that age, at that time, was what propelled me into who Eugene Jibunor is today. And of course, in the case of Nelson Mandela, I became a member of the Free Mandela movement. And I got to meet with Winnie Mandela, Zinzi, the daughter, and I worked with them during the whole struggle leading to his release. And which was how I got this endorsement to build a monument in his honor.
Innovative content, global audience.